Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. Today, I have a very special guest. His name is John King David Haskins, but he goes by King David. And I actually found him through TikTok. I first downloaded TikTok to promote my podcast, actually. And, the first thing that popped up on my screen was all these girls dancing, and a lot of them were OnlyFans chicks, honestly. I did a little digging, and I was like, oh, my word, why is this being promoted? So I said, uninterested, not interested. And then I searched quit porn, no fap, blah, 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 blah. And his page came up, and I found it to be very educational. And he's like a quitting porn coach. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, man. I've been looking forward to it.
So what caused you to start being a quitting porn coach? Walk me down that story.
Yeah, so in a nutshell, I would have officially quit porn in January of 2020, and at that time I was just getting my feet wet with more serious social media platforms like Twitter, and I was following someone who goes by Jose Rosado, that's his name, and he tweeted, he's like, if you write an ebook and you sell 5 copies of that ebook per day at $20 a pop, that's $100 a day, which is more than enough for most people to replace their 9 to 5. And at the time, I was making $10 an hour as a sales associate at a sporting goods store, and I was like, shit, $100 a day selling ebooks, doing nothing but tweeting. That sounds pretty good. And the premise was, if you've solved a problem, you can write an ebook about how you solved that problem, and other people will buy that on the contingency that they too need help solving that problem. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, all right, what problems have I solved? And at this time I was 20 years old, and I'm like, oh, I stopped watching porn. So I wrote an ebook on that, 10 steps to quit porn. And then as my expertise evolved, I turned it into a video course, a video masterclass, then I started selling that. And then I had other friends who were doing different kinds of coaching, and they were all like, yo, you can do quit porn coaching. You just walk people through your program. And I'm like, oh, cool. So I tried to get clients for the longest time, tweeted about it, sent emails out about it. And it wasn't until one of my former masterclass buyers reached out to me. He's like, hey, man, I need a little extra help with this. I'm having some issues. So he and I hopped on a Zoom call, and I proposed my coaching service to him. And he became my very first coaching client. I think I signed him on April 1st, 2021. So almost a year after I first initially, decided I was going to have a dedicated platform, and at first I started off as one of those anon masculinity accounts that you see everywhere, and they're kind of annoying because they're just chilling platitudes, and it's all the same stuff over and over and over again. But of course, those were the people that had the biggest following, the biggest brand, so I wanted to emulate that for a while, but I got to the point where I'm like, no, I'm just going to put my face out there. Did that, and as I've grown and as my expertise has evolved, I've kind of just taken on the mantle of, well, I'm the world's only quit porn strategist. I know there's other people that do coaching for it, but nobody that I've seen gets results quite like I get. So in a nutshell, I help dudes quit porn in 31 days, and I do that with various different strategies that are science-based, but also by rewiring the subconscious mind, because the subconscious mind holds our programming, and when you can tap into that programming, when you can change it, the possibilities are endless, because the subconscious mind houses everything that it means to be you. So if you can go in, if you can influence that, if you can change that, if you can bend that just a little bit, you can do a lot of good in your own life. And I was able to figure out how to do that for myself, and then started doing that with clients. But of course, it was an evolutionary process. Like my very first client that I signed on, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. If I'm being completely honest, I had no idea what coaching it was going to look like. All I knew is if he relapsed, I was going to help him learn from it. We were going to adjust accordingly. And it got to the point where I created my 31-day quit porn mastery program, which is my one-on-one coaching program that I walk all of my clients through, and it has been a smashing success, and it's something that I enjoy doing. I do this full time. I'm currently kind of Airbnb hopping. I'm in the process of moving out of the awful state of Illinois for many different reasons, the weather and politics being the two biggest ones. And right now I'm in beautiful sunny Destin, Florida, helping dudes quit porn and and bulking and going to the gym. So I'm feeling
Nice.
pretty good. It's kind of me in a nutshell.
That's awesome. And so, I guess you said you had a problem with porn. When did that problem start? And then when did you realize that it was a
Right.
problem and that you wanted to stop? And how did you stop?
Yeah, so the I would have first been exposed to porn around 9 years old, and for those who don't know, the average age of unwanted exposure to pornography is 11 years old. But right now, with the advent of the internet and platforms like TikTok and Instagram, especially about how they're funneling themselves and what content they're being driven to, you're I think you're like 2 clicks. Everyone is 2 clicks away from finding porn on the internet, and it doesn't take an awful lot for that to happen. So I found it 9 years old, first exposure to it. It was actually, believe it or not, a wallpaper app on the App Store. So there's no explicit content, but it was, well, something that a 9-year-old didn't quite know how to comprehend and wrap my head around. And, it kind of evolved from there, where I remember, like, looking up boobs on YouTube and seeing what would pop up, and the next thing, like, oh, you can get more explicit images if you look this up on Safari, and it evolved from there to the point where I think anywhere from like 12 to 14, I would have started to become more of a daily user, watching a lot of porn, looking at a lot of still images, and it wasn't until age 17 probably where I started to like research other like forms of self-improvement, because all throughout high school, and this was some of this was porn influence, but I was pretty obsessed with being as attractive as possible. So that led me to things like the gym, lifting weights, but also like trying to figure out how women, and at this time I was in high school, so how girls worked, how to tell if a girl likes you. I read all the wiki hows and shit like that, and YouTube videos, and sooner or later it would have got to the point where one of those videos would have suggested, if you suck with women, which in high school I did, you should stop watching porn. And this was all like new to me, right? Like, what do you mean stop watching porn? I didn't think anything of it. That being said, I was born and raised in a religious household, so I knew that watching porn was incongruent with my religious beliefs, but that was never a strong enough reason to stop watching it. It wasn't until I realized, oh, this is negatively impacting my confidence, my relationships, my mental state. It's one of the reasons why I'm depressed. And I don't know if erectile dysfunction is the best way to classify what I was experiencing at 17, but just the fact that, like, if anything was going to happen, porn would have to get that ball rolling. So I was like, oh shit, I need to probably stop doing this. So I tried. I'll just stop watching. It can't be that hard. Whoo! Lo and behold, it was not as easy as I thought it was going to be. And granted, throughout the past, I remember, like, there'd be times where I'll just delete my browsers. I won't have that browser, because I would always download a specific browser that I could use to, like, go and search. So I could delete it afterwards, and it wouldn't interfere with the history or anything. And I remember, like, I'll just delete it. I won't download it again. And then 3 days would go by, and I re-download it, and I'm rewatching. But 17 was when I, for the first time, instead of like looking for porn, I was looking for how to quit porn. And I would have been introduced to all the science, talking about how porn has negatively impact the wiring in the brain, how it's affecting the mesolimbic dopaminergic reward system, or the reward system, how it's influencing your thoughts, how it's changing the way that you interact with women and perceive things like sex and romance. And just all these other things, like issues in the gym, lack of motivation, lack of energy, lack of focus, productivity being terrible. So 17 onward, it was kind of my mission to stop watching porn. 18, I would have gotten my first serious relationship, and that was kind of when I realized, like, oh shit. At least going into it, I didn't realize just how much I didn't know, but now looking back, it's like, oh, I did not know how relationships work. I did not know, like, relationships, it's two people coming together. There's roles, there's responsibilities, there's needs that need to be met, there's communication that needs to be happening. I didn't know any of that stuff. I didn't know any of that stuff. And I also didn't have very good, like, at that time, the reason why I got in that relationship was it was the first chick that I ran into that reciprocated, that liked me. And I don't even think that I liked her at first until I realized, like, oh, I think she likes me. And that was the thing that got me interested in her, regrettably so. Yeah, don't do that. Anyways, we dated for 9 months. She broke up with me, and beginning of that relationship, I was still kind of like lifting weights. I would have weighed. I'm 5'10", so I'm not super duper tall, give or take. But I would have weighed like 155, and at the end of that relationship, I lost weight, and I would have weighed 138 and a half. So I lost a lot of weight, and I hadn't weighed that much since probably 16 when I was like really starting to get into fitness and lifting. So the stress of the relationship plus the stress of school, job, and some other prevailing family circumstances really did a number on me. And there was a period while I was in that relationship where I wasn't watching porn often, but I knew, like, I would rather not watch this because she wasn't the most attractive. Looking back on it, it's kind of like, damn, what was I thinking? Well, I was desperate. I needed that validation, that emotion, that connection, that feeling of being needed. So she wasn't very attractive. So I remember thinking, like, oh, I probably shouldn't like watch this because, if we get married and we start getting it on, then I'm going to be thinking about all these porn stars that I've seen that are significantly more attractive, and I don't want that going on in my head. So like I try to make an effort to stay off of it, but alas, never very long. And after we broke up, I pretty much went straight back into it. And there was a period in time throughout high school where I would I remember like I'd sext strangers, just chicks that I met on like Whisper and shit like that. And so I would be sending and receiving photos, and then I'd be watching porn in between, waiting for the photos, and then sending, receiving, sexting, all that jazz. So after the breakup, I kind of got back into that, started watching more porn. And at that point, I was kind of like, I don't really care to stop. I don't know how to stop. I kind of gave up at that point. Because even when I first started researching it at 17, like, I knew some of the science, and I had watched the videos on, how to stop watching porn, read the articles, 10 steps to stop watching porn. And none of it really worked. Of course, now as I look back on that, I didn't have a strong enough reason to stay off of it. My reason to keep watching it was always stronger than my reason to not watch it, which is a really important part of staying clean and maintaining that freedom. But so 18 to 19, I would have kept watching porn. I was also introduced to vapes by my girlfriend at the time. So I started vaping because she had one. I really liked it, and I was like, sharing this, it tasted good. The nicotine was nice. So I started vaping, and I would have maintained vaping, and nicotine strength would have increased as time went on. That was also one reason why I lost all that weight, because nicotine is an appetite suppressant, and all stimulant drugs are. So there were plenty of times where, like, I'd want something sweet, and I'd just rip my my blue raspberry vape, and oh man, my sweet tooth was very happy. So nicotine strength would have increased, porn use would have increased. And I was just kind of like, brain was fried. I was like, I don't really care to quit anymore. It wasn't until July 2019, because that's when they changed the tobacco law in Illinois to be, you had to be 21 to purchase tobacco or nicotine product. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I was 19 at the time. They didn't, grandfather me in because I was already legally purchasing my stuff. So I was like, all right, I got to quit nicotine because I don't want to, I didn't really want to do the whole illegal, like, find a corner store or get people to do it, because I'm like, that's a major inconvenience. I don't want to do that. So I started looking up how to quit nicotine. And effectively the easiest way to quit nicotine, or as I thought at the time, the easiest way to quit nicotine was to just wean yourself off little by little as time goes on and stick with that routine. And I was like, well, I wonder if you can do that with porn. So I would have got off nicotine, and then that same time I would have made serious progress getting off of porn. And I remember it like it was yesterday. It was a hot summer afternoon, just got back from the pool. I was feeling a certain way, so I decided I was going to go to the bathroom, do my thing. And as I had Pornhub loaded up and I was watching, browsing, and doing what you do when you are on the tube, this thought came into my head that said, I'm not going to feel any different. Why even bother? Like, I'm not going to feel any better afterwards. And I was like, yeah, that's true. I'm not going to feel any better when I'm done. So I shut Pornhub off, put my phone down, put it on the counter, and I took my shower like I originally anticipated. And it dawned on me while I was in the shower. I was like, holy shit, I just said no to porn for the first time in my life. And it was in that moment that I had hope. And when I realized, oh, I can actually stop. Because I realized, like, if I said no this one time, then I have what it takes to say no every other time in the future. So, that wouldn't be the last time that I watched it, but instead of relapses being like an every day, every other day, it became less and less and less. And I started to implement that kind of weaning off thing. I'm like, all right, well, how about instead of going to the full-blown porn, why don't I just stick with where it would start, which would be like Instagram photos and shit like that. So I would load those up, do my thing, back off, and gradually I'd wean myself off. And as I've learned with the dopamine, you're kind of giving yourself just enough to satisfy that itch, but you're not giving enough to sustain the addiction, so you can gradually come down. And that is a way to end addiction, but it is no longer the methodology that I teach. It's no longer really the methodology that I endorse. And even though I quit nicotine that way, nicotine was one of those things where it became so, like, ingrained in my friend circles that it was really hard to stay away from. Like, I had one friend that was 21. He had a vape, and it was a strong vape. And I remember, like, I'd hit that thing and just... And it got to the point where I had one friend that had a vape. And this would have been, like, the winter of 2019, where I was done vaping, but I would hang out with him. And I'm like, he's got a vape. I'm going to hit his vape. So I'd hang out with him, like, almost every single night, and I'm hitting his vape. And I'm like, what am I doing? Why don't I just go get my own? This is ridiculous. So I went and I got my own vape from a corner store, found a few places around town that didn't card. And that was when when disposables just came out. So, like, they had, like, the really fruity, the good shit that were, like, the Juul knockoffs that you could buy. Man. So I would have started using nicotine heavily again. And at that time, porn would have been, like, a very... the frequency decreased a lot. And at that point in my life, it was so infrequent that... to me, the addiction was broken because I wasn't, like, doing it all the time. I wasn't obsessing over it. I wasn't obsessively pursuing it. Like, it just happened, maybe when I was up too late, when my guard was down. So I would have considered, the addiction was broken. I was just on the way of completely getting that out, largely because I, was able to wean myself off, but I also implemented some very rudimentary thought exercises that I would run myself through that I have since refined with all of my clients. Because as I've continued to learn about the subconscious mind, rewiring it, mental strategies that make it easier to focus, stay focused, and get work done, I've realized there were a lot of things that I was really spot on with, but I had no idea why. Like, I'm like, this works really well. Like, I remember, realizing, because I was Googling, like, what does porn do to the brain? And I learned that when you watch porn, a part of your brain called the lateral orbital frontal cortex, which is responsible for logical thinking and rational decision making, shuts down. And when I heard that, I was like, rational thinking and logical thinking and rational decision making, holy heck. When I start to get the urge to watch porn, I got these justifications that are coming in my mind, and they're not logical at all. Just take a peek. Oh, you can watch it and not masturbate. And it hit me. I'm like, oh my goodness, these thoughts are illogical, and this shutdown in the brain is the reason why I would keep giving in to, like, really dumb things. Like, there were times where I have a great day, and my brain would go, we could watch porn right now. I'm like, yeah, you're right, we could. And I'd go and I would watch it, and, like, when I think back on this logically, I'm like, it makes no sense that I did that when I was having a great day. Well, when you know what I know about dopamine now, you know why that is. But anyways, with the shutdown, I realized, I'm like, if I use logical thoughts to my advantage, I can keep that part of my brain on, and I can prevent relapses. So I was like, what's the best way to do this? And I decided that I would talk to myself out loud when these urges would hit me, these cravings would hit me. And I'd be like, no, I don't want to watch porn because I actually feel really good right now. Like, I don't want to watch it because I'll have more confidence and it'll be easier to talk to me. No, I don't want to watch it. I don't want to feel bad. And that worked really well for me. And I've since refined that process. And the reason why that worked is because the subconscious mind is always listening. It's always taking in new information. It's always modulating, and it's creating your perception of reality. Your subconscious mind is the seat of the mind's eye. So the subconscious mind can't differentiate between fantasy and reality. And this is one of the reasons why porn is so bad, is because when you're watching porn, your brain either thinks you're having sex or it thinks you're observing sex in real time. And this is one of the reasons why cuckoldry is so common and why so many dudes are cucking themselves, is because they're watching dudes screw the chicks that presumably they want to be screwing. So they're training their brain to find pleasure not from the pursuit of sex or the act of sex itself. They're training their brain to find pleasure from watching other people have sex. So this is why things like the cuckoldry fetish is so common now, and why dudes are so cucked, is because their subconscious mind literally cannot tell the difference between what they're watching and what is real life. So the subconscious mind is always listening. The subconscious mind is perceiving your reality, and there are things that are influencing your reality. For example, if you hear something, or if you say something, or if you see something 3 times, your subconscious mind more or less accepts that as truth. So we are very easy to brainwash. We're very easy to persuade. We're very easy to manipulate, especially if you know how to talk to the subconscious mind. And on the one hand, this can be very sinister. You can see in recent world events where the masses were swayed one way that negatively impacted society on a grand scale, that is going to prove itself to have negative consequences on people and society at large for years to come, because they bought into the propaganda. But then there's also ways to use speaking to the subconscious mind in a persuasive way that's beneficial, that's influential for people, that can lead to effective communication, that can lead to elevated mood, that can lead to healthier mentality and healthier mental state. So back to 2019, I started talking to myself out loud. And I've always been one to talk to myself, but I started using this to my advantage. And I remember when I sat down to write this ebook, or when I actually rewrote the ebook and turned it into my masterclass, I coined the terms addict brain and sober mind. And the addict brain effectively was what I said the addiction was, what was responsible for the addiction. It's part of your brain that addicted to porn and wants nothing more than to watch porn. And then there was a sober mind, which is the part of you that wants to quit. It's a part of you that gets you to the point of realizing porn is bad, I want to stop. And what I called meta-separation at the time was the act of separating your thoughts from your addict brain and your sober mind. The addict brain was responsible for that shutdown, getting you to watch porn, and then the sober mind was what would keep you off of it. And at that time, that first time that I escaped relapse, that voice I heard, I credit that to the quote-unquote sober mind. So I was like, okay, I gotta be able to get my sober mind to be stronger than the addict brain. That's essentially what I taught people to do in my very first masterclass. And I've since refined the methodology. I've realized the addict brain is a valid concept, but it's better understood as something else, and the sober mind is the subconscious mind. So I don't use that terminology explicitly anymore, but it's evolved. So I quit porn, January 2020, but around that same winter time, there was a coworker of mine who smoked weed, and he was very like, "Oh, you guys gotta try this. You guys gotta. It's like nicotine but better. It's great. You guys gotta try it." And sooner or later, me and my friend, we went over to his house, and he had a vape. He had a weed vape pen. And he's like, "Oh, it's just like normal vape, guys. Come on." So we tried it, smoked for the first time, and I really liked it. And at that point, I started to look for ways to kind of, justify using it. And everyone talks about, "Oh, weed has got medicinal properties. You could use it as medicine." It's a plant. It's natural, bro. So I kind of bought into that. I think that's, again, another source of propaganda. I know there are some legitimate ways that marijuana can benefit, but the reason, like, I think it's Parkinson's, the one that makes you shaky. And the reason why marijuana can benefit with Parkinson's, the way that I understand it, at least I think it's Parkinson's, I could be totally wrong, whatever one makes you shake, is because dopamine plays a role in movement and in fine motor skills. So if you're low in dopamine, your movement is going to suffer. And when you smoke weed, it releases a lot of dopamine in the brain, also releases a lot of serotonin. So that dopamine goes through your reward pathway, and then it goes through your movement pathway. And when it goes through the movement pathway, it can help you stabilize. So if you've ever seen videos of like people shaking and shit, and they smoke and then they stop shaking, it's because of dopamine. Anyways, I started to look for ways to rationalize smoking weed for OCD symptoms, obsessive compulsive disorder, and not like everything must be organized, but in the fact that like I had repetitive ruminations that would not stop and were driving me nuts and led to a lot of insecurities, a lot of low confidence, a lot of anxiety. And that especially, made it difficult for me to fall asleep at night, where I'd be up 30, 60 minutes every night thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking, to the point where I just couldn't go to bed. And that first night that I smoked, I went to bed really easy. I was like, holy shit. I've never had anything get me to bed that easy before. So as time went on, I began to pursue and get my own weed. My one friend that I went with, he jumped into it sooner than I did. And he got to the point where he was buying his own stuff, so I'd hang out, I'd smoke with him. And then I started buying my own stuff, started, seeing a plug and shit. And beginning of 2020 kind of would have been my stoner era. Quit porn, becoming a stoner. But I was also, I would have quit nicotine, but then I would have, as that year gone on, I would have increased my nicotine usage. And it would have been an on and off again thing. So I quit nicotine like 2 or 3 times, really. But then I got back into it. So 2020 goes on. I become a nightly user of the devil's lettuce. I'm smoking every single night, high every night for about 4 hours at a time. All the while, I'm trying to grow my business. And I'm like, why do I not have any energy? Why do I not have any focus? And it was another dopamine addiction. So anyways, I eventually was able to get off of weed in November of 2021. And then I was able to get off of nicotine from the pouches and the vape form in February of 2022. And then I would have waited like 90 days plus after having used the nicotine pouches after quitting, which I was able to do in 7 days. I was able to quit nicotine in 7 days. And I at that point, I would have had nicotine in my blood every waking hour of the day. So if I was not asleep or eating food, there was nicotine. Like I had a pouch in. Like I was doped up on nicotine nonstop. So my blood nicotine content was very, very high. So the addiction was really, really strong, to the point where I'd have a pouch in, and as soon as that ran out, I'd put another one in. I mean, there was no break between nicotine. It was constant nicotine. Even to the point where I was doing coaching calls with dudes, helping them quit porn, like it got to a point where I'm like, I can't even not have a pouch in while I'm on this call, because I'll lose my train of thought. I won't be able to focus. So I started using a drug while I was coaching people to quit another one. Jeez, this is a little hypocritical of me. Plus, while having to smoke marijuana to fall asleep every single night. But eventually, February 2020, got off of those, and I've officially been addiction-free since then, almost a year now. I mean, I smoke cigars, but that is something that has nothing to do with addiction. And having been addicted to nicotine, I know when I go out and I smoke, I'm like, very different feeling. Very different feeling. But yeah, now I'm addicted to helping dudes and growing my business and going to the gym and, evolving and advancing in life. And a lot of that has to do with understanding how the brain uses dopamine as a motivator, but then also being able to influence my behaviors and identity with talking to the subconscious mind. Because when you're able to do that, you can eliminate bad behaviors, bad habits overnight. And that's how I was able to quit nicotine so fast. Was I sat down and I ended up creating this exercise that I then gave to my clients to quit porn. I sat down and I wrote every way, every time, every instance that I'd have nicotine cravings. And for all intents and purposes, as pretty much anything, I'd wake up, nicotine. I'd eat food, I'd want nicotine. I'd drive, I'd want nicotine. I'd go for a walk, nicotine. I'd work on my business, nicotine. I'd be with friends, nicotine. I'd watch TV, nicotine. So it was everything. It was literally everything. And then I wrote down every single way that my life would improve without nicotine in it. And in order to make it hit my subconscious mind, because I was learning more and more about how to talk to it, one of the keys is you can't use negatives while talking to the subconscious mind, because the subconscious mind, it doesn't understand negatives, but it's not that it doesn't understand them, it's that it can't conceptualize them, because the subconscious mind can't conceptualize abstracts, and negatives are abstract. So it's like, don't think of a purple elephant. Whatever you do, do not think of a purple elephant. I do not want you to picture a purple elephant in your mind right now. Most people are going to think of a purple elephant. And that's because they hear don't, and they can't conceptualize don't, because it's like, don't think of a purple elephant, and it then becomes, well, how do I not think of a purple elephant? And then as I think about not thinking about a purple elephant, I'm thinking about a purple elephant. Like, I'm conceptualizing that purple elephant. So you can't tell yourself, I stop watching porn. You can't tell yourself, I don't want to watch porn. You can't tell yourself, I never want to watch porn again, because stop, don't, never, those are all negatives, and they're very difficult for the subconscious to conceptualize. So instead of me telling myself I want to quit nicotine, I would say I want to live nicotine free. Instead of me saying I want to quit nicotine so I stop feeling like garbage, I would say I want to live nicotine free because I have more energy. And as I was learning all this stuff, I then reflected on what I knew about quitting porn. I was like, holy shit, this is stuff that I was teaching, but it's better than that. So I updated my stuff. I improved upon it. And then I started to learn about hypnosis. And hypnosis is very interesting because hypnosis is the actual practice of talking directly to the subconscious mind. And as I've learned even more recently, I've learned that it is more effective to hypnotize yourself than it is to have someone else hypnotize you. The reason why that is because when you are hypnotized, you have to be put in a trance. And a trance is a state of mind where the subconscious mind is more easily accessible. It's where it's more easily suggestible, because you make suggestions to the subconscious, which then alter the beliefs, alter your behaviors, and can lead to permanent changes. So as I learned about, I created this exercise that made it very easy for me to quit nicotine, because I wrote down all these ways that my life would improve, and I wrote them down in visual and descriptive ways, so when I would think about it, I could see it in my mind's eye. Because if you can see it in your mind's eye, it becomes a lived experience. When it's a lived experience, your subconscious mind thinks it's your real life. So as far as I was concerned, I created a simulated reality where I was nicotine-free, and I preferred that simulated reality over my real reality. So logically, I wanted that simulated reality to become my real reality, so I gave up nicotine, because the very next morning I woke up, and for the first time in years, I did not reach for that nicotine pouch. And I realized after that moment, when I did not reach for it, I went, holy shit, if I'm quitting nicotine, I'm quitting nicotine now. Like, this is the time to do it, because I just said no to it in the time where I was most likely to say yes to it. So 7 days later, I was off nicotine and never felt better, and that was when I was addiction-free, and I've been living like that since, and I've continued to learn more and more about the subconscious mind, and, a little bit more about the self-hypnosis thing. Is self-hypnosis is more effective than being hypnotized, because you don't have to be put in a trance, because your subconscious mind hears your own voice and it responds to it. And it's like, oh, I know who this is. I believe what is being said right now. I want this to happen. So I actually recently updated my program with a how to hypnotize yourself module. And it is my best professional writing yet. And it just was recently released, so we're pending results from clients, from my clientele. But I have been able to use self-hypnosis to my own benefit for my own pursuits. But the interesting thing about self-hypnosis, as I understand it, is you can't tell other people what it's for. So I can't tell you what I've used it for in my actual self-hypnosis pursuits, but for all intents and purposes, I did hypnotize myself, more or less, to quit nicotine. And I've utilized those concepts of hypnosis in my professional practice. And then I've also utilized concepts of the actual science of a dopamine addiction, understanding that, being able to break away from that. But at the end of the day, one of the reasons I'm able to get dudes off of porn in 31 days is because with the help of rewiring the subconscious mind, you can bypass cravings, withdrawals, urges completely to the point where they're no longer a negative experience. In fact, they become something you want to endure. And when that happens, it makes quitting very easy. So not only do I help dudes quit porn in 31 days, I help them enjoy the process. I help them realize this is the best possible thing for them. And part of that is thanks to what I know now about self-hypnosis. But what's interesting there is there's a very real science, because you'll see like NoFap is kind of to blame for this. They'll talk about like, oh, 90 days. It takes 90 days to rewire your brain. Well, first of all, it actually doesn't take 90 days. It can take anywhere from 30 days to 2 years, depending on how severe the case is, and that's just true of addiction. But the brain doesn't rewire itself. The brain unwires itself, because the longer you stay away from the stimulus, the longer you stay away from your drug of choice, your brain then goes back to its baseline. And something that's interesting with dopamine is, I'm sure you've seen this on any social media platform, but your self-help gurus, your productivity gurus, your business gurus, they all talk about dopamine. And they'll always talk about cheap dopamine and premium dopamine, and they'll always talk about dopamine hits. Oh, I got a hit of dopamine from that. And the truth of the matter is, there's no such thing as cheap dopamine, there's no such thing as premium dopamine, and there's no such thing as dopamine hits. There's just dopamine. And everybody has a baseline of dopamine that's kind of genetically set, but their lifestyle is also going to dictate it. Like, my dopamine baseline is a lot higher and a lot more consistent now that I'm porn free, that I'm marijuana free, that I'm nicotine free. And since I'm eating healthy foods, and since I'm exercising, and since I'm pursuing other healthy endeavors, like I've got my sleep under lock, I have mitigated blue light exposure, I'm running my own business, so I'm living life on my own terms, I'm sun maxing. I take my health and my lifestyle very, very seriously, and I've optimized it pretty well. But anyway, so my dopamine baseline is pretty good. It's definitely above your average individuals. So, and why this is important is dopamine comes in peaks and it comes in lows. And whenever you do something that raises your dopamine, it goes above that baseline. But dopamine is actually a pleasure-pain response. So every time it goes above baseline, it then must go below baseline of equal strengths, equal proportions. So when you watch porn, it's not that porn releases dopamine in the brain. Well, that's essentially the easiest way to explain without getting into the sciencey nitty-gritty. So I retract that. When you watch porn, it does release dopamine in the brain, but it releases the amount of dopamine that's available in your brain. Porn doesn't make dopamine in the brain. It releases dopamine that's already there. So you watch porn, your brain goes above baseline, you orgasm, and then the dopamine drops. It immediately drops afterwards, and then you go below baseline. So that's why you feel like garbage afterwards, and that's why you don't feel good until you're back watching porn again. And the more and more you do this, the more and more you train your brain to realize, I can get a lot of dopamine from porn, and it becomes your preferred way of getting dopamine, to the point where you don't experience pleasure from other areas of life outside of watching porn. And that's addiction. It's that continued repetitive going back to it to get enjoyment and pleasure out of that sole thing that you don't get from other areas of your life. And the reason why this is detrimental with like your focus and your energy is because dopamine is not the chemical job well done. It's not the reward for pleasure. Dopamine is released in anticipation. Dopamine is your strongest motivator. Dopamine is the neuromodulator in the brain that says more, more, more. If you have a healthy relationship with dopamine, you should be getting dopamine when you are building your business, when you are making healthy foods, when you're eating healthy foods, when you're going to the gym, when you're working out in the gym.
Hitting the
It should,
sauna. No, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah. It's in things like cold or cold water exposure. I've not dabbled with cold exposure, but I do know that can
Some good
increase your
stuff.
dopamine
Keep going.
really high. Yeah. So that's why if you're going to pursue a business, an online business, if you're going to do anything in the name of self improvement, you got to get your dopamine under check. And for me, that just so happened to be quitting porn and getting everything else solved after that. So I'm a huge proponent of quitting porn is the first step toward living your best life, and I'm able to help dudes do that in a very timely manner, in a very quick, and a very efficient, and very painless way, in 31 days, which is pretty damn impressive.
Heck yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I took down a lot of notes and learned a lot, honestly. Like, I have a somewhat similar story in some ways. Like, yeah, I've been, like, I guess 5 months porn free, or 4.5,
There you go.
technically. And I kind of use the similar strategies of you, like the subconscious mind, like what would life be like without it? But
Right.
there's this one book I read called Atomic Habits, which you've probably heard of.
Yeah,
but
I've heard of. I've never actually read it, and at this
Sure.
point, I'm not going to because it's so
Sure.
memed.
No, yeah. But there was one thing in it where it was talking about how, let's say there's a person who is trying to quit smoking cigarettes, and they are in a party, and this one person's like, "Oh, do you want a cigarette?" And they're like, there's two options he could take. The first option is, "Oh, I'm trying to quit. No, I don't want it." And it's like, okay, well, you're currently identifying as someone who still has a problem and an addiction.
Right.
You're still identifying as a person who is trying to quit, versus the second route, which is a better route, which is, actually, I'm not a smoker. I don't smoke. It's like, oh, okay.
Right.
You're now identifying as someone who doesn't. And that's actually what I've done with porn, where it's like, well, I'm not a person who's trying to quit porn. I actually just don't watch porn. I'm not a human who watches porn, so
Right.
why would I watch it if that's not my identity? If I want my identity to be someone who doesn't watch porn, then I don't watch. And that really has helped me, and probably through also hypothesizing what life could be like without porn. And it truly has been so much better without.
Right. Yeah, that identity work is very, very important. That's something that I've also utilized with my clients and in my professional practice. It is quite literally, getting people to identify as a porn-free man, because the question then becomes, well, what would a porn-free man do right now? And when your identity is that of a porn-free man, you then naturally do what a porn-free man does, just like what a football players do. They play football. What does a podcaster do? They record podcasts. What does a porn-free man do? He's porn-free. So you then ask, well, what do I do? What do I do in those moments? And because when you affirm an identity, you affirm the identity by building that picture, by painting that picture, by talking to the subconscious mind. And then once you realize that that's then your identity, you then take the action steps that affirm that identity, and it becomes a simple two-step revolving process. You affirm the identity with your words, and then through the identity, you take action that then affirms the identity. So if you're porn-free, you do as a porn-free man does, and every time you do as a porn-free man does, you affirm that you are, in fact, porn-free. And when you affirm that you are porn-free, you do what a porn-free man does, and then so on and so forth. So to distill quitting porn in its simplest form, you live porn-free, and you do as a porn-free man does. And I do like to make that distinction, living porn-free versus quitting porn, because it does have that same negative connotations in the subconscious mind. Because I'll talk to my clients about this on calls. I'm like, so what does quitting porn mean? What does that look like? What does that look like for you? Can you tell me, what does it mean to quit porn? Have you experienced that? Have you experienced quitting porn before? I'm like, no, I've never experienced it. Well, I don't know what that's. Well, I'm like, yeah, it's because you don't quit porn. What the hell does that mean? And I'm like, but have you gone like a week plus without it? And they're like, oh yeah, I've gone a week plus without it. I'm like, did you feel better? You have more energy? You have more confidence? Yeah, oh, I felt great when I was without it. That's what living porn free is like. So whenever you think about living porn-free, you just think the last time you had that streak and how good that felt and how much you want that. And then it just comes down to choosing that over watching porn, and it's funny because I'll joke about this with my veteran clients because I have a client-only group chat, UPS Master Race, and we have group calls on Monday nights and Thursday nights, and I'll talk to some of my clients that have been through the program, they're porn-free to this day, and we'll joke about, like, the worst advice you can receive as a porn addict is just don't watch it, bro. No, that doesn't work. That's horrible advice. Stop. I hate it when people comment that under my posts. I'm like, shut the... you don't know what you're talking about. But then you come, full circle where, the biggest brain moment is to realize, just don't watch it. In its simplest form, it's all that it is. It's all that it is. But, of course, the just don't watch it advice doesn't work until you're not watching it, until you just don't watch it, until you're free of it. So in a roundabout way, all the dude bros are, I just don't watch it. You're like, you don't know what you're talking about, but then you get to the point where you're done with it, and you're like, oh, that's the secret. But that's but those those who are listening that are trying to quit, when you quit, you then realize, oh, that is simple. But if I were to tell you, just don't watch it right now, yeah, good luck. It's not gonna do much good because that also neglects the subconscious mind. Just don't watch it. What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. The subconscious doesn't conceptualize it. And it also goes against the dopamine wiring. The brain has been wired to want this thing, and you have to give it something that wants more. And you have to realize that you want that thing more than you wanted the other thing. And this thing that you now want has to be better than that thing that you used to want. And from a chemical standpoint, the potency of porn is very, very high. But one thing that I realized, especially after I got off of, marijuana and nicotine, because I was effectively abusing in uppers and downers where I would smoke to go to bed, and then I'd have nicotine to stay awake, and then I would get so hyped off nicotine that I'd have to smoke weed to fall asleep, is instead of living life where you feel kind of shitty throughout the whole day, and your high is only the literal high, where it's like you feel really bad, and you get that base, that peak, and then you go back down. Well, now I live where it's a consistent baseline, and it may not reach, that baseline may not be as high as that peak. It's more like down here.
But the average
But I would
is
rather
way
be
higher.
up here. Yeah, I'd rather be here all day, every day. Well, most all day, every day. Still have down days. That's part of being a human.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of accepting life quality is really not every single day you're going to be able to perform. Sometimes your 110% means taking a nap and going on walks and stuff. Other days, that means going to the gym and working on your business and making your 3 meals or your 4 meals and then also going for your walk and then going to bed at the right time and all this other stuff. Sometimes that's 110%. But I'd much rather have that consistent baseline where my old baseline was down here. And instead of it peaking, it's consistent. But now, when it does peak, I hosted a men's retreat in the beginning of January down here in Destin, Florida. I had 4 participants. And I was so excited. I was so ready for that men's retreat that I was basically high all weekend. I mean, I remember driving down here. It was like a 13-hour drive from Illinois down here to Destin, Fort Walton. And I was so excited. I was so hyped that I would have kept driving had it not gotten so late. And I'm like, I should probably go to bed just to be better safe than sorry. And then I woke up, I'm like, I'm so excited, I can't wait to get down. Then I got down here, and I was a day early, and I had to, wait for everybody to show up, and then as they showed up, and it was just amazing. I can't tell you the last time. I woke up, ready to go, excited, super excited, felt awesome. And then, of course, when the retreat ended, I felt kind of, down. I was like, what's going on? And then I realized, oh my gosh, my dopamine was so high that I'm coming down. I'm literally coming down because I messaged the participants, because part of the theme of the retreat was accountability and maintaining that communication. I messaged them afterwards. I'm like, guys, you feeling low today? They go, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, it's because we were so high off of dopamine that we're crashing. So it took 2-3 days for me to kind of chill out. And in my own life, my own practice, it is that kind of awareness of dopamine. And I was like, if I'm feeling kind of lousy, then what are some things that I can do that'll give me that natural jolt. And something that I learned from the Huberman Labs podcast, and Huberman Labs, holy shit, that's some
Smart
helpful
MF.
stuff. Yeah, oh yeah, he's got. I mean, there's some very very smart, very very actionable stuff. One of the things he talks about is one of his colleagues or something, coined growth mindset, and growth mindset is to find enjoyment in the process, not in the outcome of the process. So think about the thing that you do for the sake of doing because it's healthy for you. For many people, that might be going to the gym. And there are a lot of people who in order to make going to the gym more enjoyable for them, they will drink a coffee. They'll drink their favorite pre-workout. And the caffeine will open up their receptors to be able to take on more dopamine. They'll feel better. Look at that caffeine high from that. And they'll go to the gym. But while they're at the gym, they'll also listen to their favorite music. And that's giving them dopamine. And what ends up happening is their brain gets the dopamine from those things, other than going to the gym, to the point where if they go to the gym without the coffee, or without the pre-workout, without the music, they're not going to have a good time because their brain's not going to fire. And then the same is true too. Like if you go to the gym and your premise is, after I go to the gym, I'm going to let myself have a double quarter pounder of bacon and cheese, then you're all of a sudden only going to the gym so you can have that bacon double quarter pounder with cheese. And that's not good either. So instead, you want to tell yourself, I enjoy going to the gym. I love going to the gym. Going to the gym makes me feel so good. Because what that does is that literally makes your brain more susceptible to the dopamine that you're naturally going to get from going to the gym. There's also endorphins that your body's releasing while you're exercising. But you do this throughout every pursuit of your life that leads to your betterment, which is just, we're supposed to feel good when we live healthy, and you simply are not going to feel that way when you're addicted to things, when you're addicted to porn, when you're addicted to drugs, when you're abusing substances and things of that nature. You're just not going to feel good. But if you tell yourself, I feel so good while I work out, I feel so good for me it's writing Twitter threads, I feel so good when I'm taking care of clients, I feel so good when I'm on a podcast, then you realize, oh, I do feel good, this is awesome. And then I learned that literally within the last 2 weeks, and I realized, I'm like, oh my goodness, that's even more confirmation that the subconscious stuff that I've learned is spot on. And it just goes, it's the easiest way to make radical changes in a short period. Because quitting nicotine in 7 days is no small feat. You're more likely to quit crack cocaine cold turkey than you are nicotine cold turkey. And crack cocaine releases more dopamine in the brain than nicotine does. I think nicotine releases, it's a similar amount.
But nicotine so accessible, so it's like, a lot of people do it, so it makes it probably harder for those factors. Possibly.
Nicotine's accessible, but it's a very strong chemical compound. The way that nicotine interacts with the brain, I mean, nicotine literally becomes a part of your brain's normal functioning, where it adapts itself. Like it basically becomes a part of your brain and your body. Like when I got off of nicotine, the withdrawal process, which I was able to enjoy, still had some unfortunate, bouts where like it affected my digestion because your gut gets addicted to nicotine as well. Nicotine is very, very addictive. So being able to essentially hypnotize myself to get off of it within 7 days is quite impressive. And of course, being able to help dudes end lifelong porn addictions. Because I've had clients that have been addicted to porn anywhere from 5 years to 35 months, 5 years to 35 years plus, all walks of life. I've had business owners, I've helped, dads, I've helped defense attorney lawyers, I've helped dudes that sell, e-commerce, clothing brands, I've helped everybody. I helped a pastor in Ireland one time, for crying out loud. All different ages, all different walks of life, all different walks of life. 31 days. You work with me, you're done for. You're done. You're gonna be in a great state, great position.
Yeah, like one other thing I noticed. Well, like I was in a relationship and I would watch porn and I would notice that I wouldn't even find the girl I was with as attractive, like you were saying, as maybe the porn women, and like it had made me feel like, this woman isn't enough. And we actually happened to break up, and I actually started dating someone else. But I've been porn free throughout this entire process, and I feel myself not wishing she was more at all because I haven't been exposing my brain to those. It's a
Right.
slightly different topic that you were going down, but I've noticed that I have a lot more gratitude for what I have and less craving for something that is like I'm not going to put my energy into something that's a fantasy that is going to ruin the relationship I have. I'm going to throw my energy towards the person I'm with,
Right.
and I'm not going to be distracted in any way. And so that's been really useful for me too. It's just a little caveat that I thought to add.
Yeah, no, it's quitting porn is very beneficial to your relationships. And, in the event that you have any married listeners, sometimes married guys are like, I don't really know how it's going to benefit my marriage. It's like, well, have you been watching porn throughout the entirety of your marriage? For most guys, that answer is a yes, which means they don't know what they're missing because they've never experienced what they're missing. The same thing is like most guys are exposed to porn at such a young age that they go through their entire adult life, all their formative years watching porn. Because that's something that I ran into too. It's like, how can it be that much better? Well, I first saw it when I was 9, and I effectively was a daily user from like the age of 12, 13 onward for the longest time, where it's like, oh, of course I didn't know why it would be beneficial because I didn't know any better. I can't tell you what it felt to be an energetic 7 and 8 year old. That was forever ago. I mean, I'll be 23 soon, so I'm not super duper old by any means. But it's still like, I can't tell you about that. I mean, I know I had fun when I was 7, but geez, I can't put myself in those shoes. But now it's like, yo. I mean, I'm a business owner for crying out loud. I mean, I set my own time. I do my own work. I make a lot of money. I make good money. And I'm 3 minutes at the beach and 3 minutes that way because of my business. I can walk down to the beach. I've been watching the sunrise every morning. People don't know how therapeutic that is. People don't know how good that is for them and their health. Circadian rhythm, boys. Look it up. Figure out how to reset yours. It's very important.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, the whole relationship thing, because looking at your woman is supposed to be a very enthralling experience. And when you have endless options at your fingertips, any kind of woman, any kind of assets, any kind of build, hair color, complexion, features, purport, you name it, it's out there. Any angle you want, you can get a hold of. They've got porn for everything. Holy shit, man. I mean, you can find some weird stuff out there. And it just goes to show, because what is happening is I'll see this, and people comment this on my posts, and people will perpetuate this. Oh, if you want to quit porn, just get a girlfriend. Just start having sex. Well, what ends up happening is you get in this relationship thinking it'll be the solution to your problems. But then things start getting steamy, right? And you're seeing things you've never, you're experiencing a person in ways you've never experienced before.
Typically, you've been cucking yourself.
Yeah, you've also been cucking yourself. Where's the other guy? When's he coming? Oh shit, it's me. What do I do? And then next thing you know, you can't. Your pee doesn't get hard, and then you realize it's just one woman, and she'll change as time goes on, but you can't snap your fingers and next thing you know she's blonde. Next thing you know she's got a bigger ass or whatever. I don't know. No, that doesn't happen. I mean, maybe you can get her to go to the gym in 6 months later, but you're going to be looking at that ass nonstop, so it's not going to look any different to you. Anyways, yeah, your relationships suffer, but it doesn't just suffer in that regard. It suffers in the emotional side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Because one thing that guys don't understand with porn is, I've said this on all my social media platforms, at least I hope I have, is you don't watch porn because you're horny. You watch porn because you're hurting. There's an emotional tension that's building up inside of you that's causing pain. And you're choosing to watch porn. You're going to porn instead of facing that pain, which is terrible for you. And in relationships, vulnerability, emotional connection, intimacy is very, very important. And when you are not taking care of your internal state of being, you are going to push loved ones away. And when you're in a relationship with a woman, she wants you to come to her and be open with her and have an emotional connection with her. And that's one of the reasons, women, I mean, they need that emotional connection. People want to talk about, you got hookup culture, and then you got the orgasm gap. Women don't orgasm as much as men. Well, that's because you're supposed to be in love, and you're not going to get that from a one-night stand. You are not going to get that. Your brain is not made, especially women's brain is not made.
Yeah, especially women's.
Not endorsed, as a man, you also don't want hookups. It's not good for you either. It does damage your pair bonding, and it can have effects on the brain, just like watching porn does.
Yep.
And there's also, last thing you want to do is be 3 different chicks' baby daddies. I mean, that's just not good. Don't do that, guys. But anyways, so it has emotional issues because you're turning to porn to work through things that, you as a man should be able to work through. Your stress, your anxiety, you should be able to face that. Yeah, your loneliness. You should be able to face that, work through that, and talk to other dudes about it. But if you're in a relationship, that level of emotional connection is very important for the relationship itself. And that's one of the reasons why you get in relationships, is so you can have someone who wants to meet your needs. And if your needs are being met by porn, or at least the perception of those needs are being met by porn, then the relationship's going to suffer. I've had married clients where they're like, my wife's not interested in me. She doesn't want to have sex anymore. I'm like, well, duh.
Yeah.
You're not talking to her, man. You got to start working through this stuff. And then 2 weeks go by, 3 weeks, and we're like, man, she can't keep her hands off me. I don't know what's going on. Like, I do. You started facing your shit, man. She thinks that's sexy as hell.
Exactly.
So, yeah. There's tons of ways, So watching porn it's not a horny thing. It's a dopamine thing. It's a pain thing.
It's a response thing. Yeah.
Right. Watching porn is a response to pain. It is not out of the pursuit of pleasure. And when you look at how addiction works, and when you realize that as addiction goes on and on and on, it's less about getting to that pleasure, and it's about making the pain stop. That's what cravings are. Cravings are pain. It's a feeling of pain. And most people give in to cravings because they want the cravings to go away. Not because they want to get high. Not because they want to feel good. Because they want the pain to go away. And it's the same reason why you watch porn. You want the pain to go away. You want to feel something. Whatever it is, you want to feel something. That's where you have to let yourself feel. I'm a big proponent of telling dudes, like, they'll be like, what do I do? What do I do? I'm like, you gotta let yourself feel your urges, man. You gotta let yourself feel the good and the bad. Because that's part of the lived experience. You have to have your good days, your bad days, your mediocre days, your great days. And you gotta let yourself feel the full spectrum of what it means to be a human. That's good emotions, that's bad emotions. In my practice.
Yeah. Keep going.
I'll just say I used to in my practice refer to it as negative emotional tension. And I realized it's not an accurate depiction because it's all emotional tension. It's all emotions. Anything can drive you to want to watch porn if you are not letting yourself feel emotions. Good emotions, bad emotions, neutral emotions. Yeah, so you don't watch porn because you're horny. You watch it because you're hurting. And you're hurting bad.
Exactly.
The boys are down bad.
Yeah, like, I think I don't know the exact numbers, but it's like upwards of 90% of men watch porn. And it's like, and there's a lot of men, I guess right now, like, more men are reporting sexlessness or even singleness than ever before, and more men are watching porn than ever before. And all these men, or many of them, are using porn as like a response to their loneliness, their sadness. They're not dealing with their emotions. They're not coping with them in the correct manner. And they're becoming like the average. And all these guys are like, oh, I can't find a woman. I don't want to. I want to find a high quality woman. But it's like, how is a high quality woman going to want to find an average man who just watches porn and copes with his negative emotions in this way instead of vulnerably explaining how lonely he is or sad or whatever? And it's like, how interesting. What if you actually tried to be extraordinary and stopped watching porn and became a person who lived porn free? Guess what? You've now became a better version of yourself, and now you're going to start attracting women that are going to want your value. And so it's like,
Right.
oh, they're going to be able to see that, this person can actually deal with his emotions instead of just driving straight to an addiction and using that to cope. And so it's like, in my experience, one of the best ways to, beat that loneliness is to try to live porn free and attract women without the need for that porn. And it's easier said than done, but I noticed, I was like, women can almost tell, like they can tell how confident you are. They can tell how emotionally vulnerable and intelligent you are. And it's like, if you're using porn all the time, you're not going to be emotionally intelligent. You're going to be not rational, as you were saying, and you're also going to be, suppressing your negative emotions down, and it's going to explode. And you're also going to not attract them because they're going to know that you're craving other women anyways. So it's like, why would I want this guy? And so it's like, there's a lot of women out there. And so it's like, if you want to attract them, in my opinion, the best route is to recognize that you can be a person who lives porn free. Either go to David, come to me. We both are people who have seemed to walk away from it. And I really do feel that there's hope for you. It might not seem like there's hope, but there is hope. I want to kind of end on this like positive note. It's like, it seems, it's like the most accessible drug out there. It's so addicting. It's like heroin. But there's people out there who have been able to walk away. And, if you don't believe in yourself, you're not going to work. It's not going to work. Like, I've even used like a porn blocker. Like, I have my dad as like an accountability person. It's like, well, Harley, doesn't that make it seem like you can't quit? And it's like, well, I just don't want to have any accessibility. It's so accessible. Why not just remove the accessibility? And so I've done that. And so it's like, oh, Harley, that means you can't quit on your own. It's like, I don't think anyone can quit anything on their own. They need to be vulnerable. They need to explain. They need to go to someone like David. It's like, we need men to be more vulnerable. Like you're saying, so many men are not intelligent and think, oh, I don't have emotions. I don't need to talk it out. I'm like, you're just being ignorant and you're being stupid. And women are going to find you so unattractive. So come on, men. Start being vulnerable and start opening up about these problems, because they truly are problems. And if you say they aren't, I'd love to see your marriage work out, because I doubt it will.
Right. Yeah, contrary to popular belief, men have more emotions than just hunger and anger and horniness.
Yeah.
There's a lot more. There's a lot of good ones. There's a lot of bad ones. But they're all part of the human experience. And you're right. The vulnerability is important. The accountability is very important. That's one of the reasons why my dudes succeed as quickly as they do, is because I take accountability very seriously. And I remember when I was quitting, and I had accountability partners on and off, but when it came down to messaging my accountability partner or watching porn, my brain was wired to watch porn, so I wouldn't actually message them. So when I work with guys, I take it upon myself to message them. Morning, noon, night, anytime in between.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. No matter what, I've seen some shitty situations. I really have. I have seen marriages turn around. I've seen dudes turn their lives around. I've seen guys that have been multiple times per day users. I've seen guys that have just watched every 2 weeks, and I've been able to help them get off porn. So it's possible for anybody of any life circumstance, no matter how far or how down bad they think they are, you can get off porn. Might be easier said than done, or with the right things might be easier done than said. Might be easier. It's just easy. I mean, it can be very easy. But it's possible. It's possible. And I want everyone to know that there is hope for you. But you also have to come to a point where you realize you're done with it. You're sick and tired of feeling this way. You're sick and tired of being sick and tired. You're sick and tired of hurting yourself, hurting your relationships, hurting your potential, hurting your values, and becoming who you need to become. Because I guarantee you porn is preventing you from being that. And if you faced yourself, you manned up, you would level up, you would improve, and you'd live porn free.
Seriously. And people are like, it's going to be hard. And it's like, well, yeah, it's going to be hard. Yeah,
life's
like, does anything good... Yeah, anything good doesn't really come easy. But actually kind of a counter case to it, once you do walk away, guess what? Life does seem to be slightly easier. You're not enslaved to your biological whims and desires. Wow, I actually don't... My mood swings aren't just up and down as much as they used to. It's like, it's going to be really hard in the beginning, but guess what? It can get better, and life can seem easier in this dimension, because I actually have the discipline to say no. Wow, that was easy. I said no. Huh. Whereas before, I was a
Right.
little weak bitch who couldn't say no ever. And it's like, doesn't seem easy at all, So like that's just
Right.
another like it's going to be hard, but the
It
end
gets easier.
result
Yeah, it gets
gets
easier.
much easier. And
Yeah.
it's just honestly, it's a hill I want to die on of like porn destroyed one of my relationships, destroyed my mood, destroyed my life in a lot of ways, but walking away from it was literally the best thing I've ever done. And the confidence I have, the mindset shift I've had, and just the relationship I've built now, just monumentally better. And I'm so thankful that I read that Atomic Habits book and found quitting porn people, and just honestly was vulnerable with my dad and with the world. So really, people, there is hope. It does get better.
No, it does. It does. And it get better real quick. I mean, 31 days. Woo!
That's not
Total
very long at all.
turnaround.
Seriously.
No, it's not. Total turnaround, very quick. Life quality through the roof. Through the
Women
roof.
will be chasing you now.
It's true.
Because
It's true.
they see that confidence. They
Once
see you're
you
not
have
just
some, yeah. Once you have something to offer, you got to keep them away with a 6-foot pole. It's, whoo!
Oh yeah, bro. Exactly. Well, that's amazing. Do you have any closing thoughts for anyone who's addicted? Just final words of advice.
Yeah. Final words of advice is learn about the mesolimbic dopaminergic reward system, figure out how it works, how to detox yourself, get control of your dopamine, how to, wean yourself off if you want to get into that route. It can take longer. It's not as effective, it's not as easy. Learn about hypnosis, learn about the power of mindset, power of habits, learn about all these things and try it all on yourself. You're on your own. Figure it out. It took me 3 years to do that. Or go to enroll.quitpornstrategies.com and work with the world's greatest.
Let's go. The
So
link
there's
will be
two
in the
options.
description.
Yeah, there's 2 options. Try it on your own. See how it goes. Try everything while you're at it. Read all the articles, watch all the YouTube videos, watch all my TikToks.
Yep.
Or work with me.
Mm-hmm.
31 days, porn free, guaranteed.
Let's
Pretty
go.
good deal.
That is good. And installing a blocker, it sounds like a weak move, but in my opinion, it's been a great move. So that's another option maybe as well. I don't know your opinion, but
My professional opinion is actually not to use blockers, but I recognize they can be a helpful tool. The tricky part is just make sure that it's you who's saying no to porn, not the blocker. Because if it's
Sure.
the blocker, then it's like, who's really winning this one? So
no, that's a great point.
sooner or
Great
later,
point.
because like if you got a blocker, you can't look at my website. It's got porn in the URL.
Oh, there we go.
And I've literally told people, like, I can't look at your website because my block.
fair
I'm like,
enough.
get rid of your blocker, dude.
There we go.
Come
Have
on,
the
work with me.
discipline
You
to
won't
say
need
no.
it.
Fair
Yeah.
enough. No, that's really good.
So, but
Yeah,
if
I
you're
really-
down bad, then yeah, a blocker can be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Especially through that first initial stage. I don't recommend people use it. I've never had a client use it.
Sure.
But if you're working with me, you don't need to use it. If it's on your own.
There we go.
Granted, I mean, I weaned off initially. The stuff that I teach is very different than the stuff that I originally used, but it is the refinement of what I originally used. And had I had it, gee whiz. I mean, I'd be a millionaire right now if I knew what I knew now back then. But that being said, everything happens as it happens, when it's supposed to happen, as it's supposed to happen. So, don't beat yourself up. You got to this point. You made it this far. Time to turn your life around. Quit
Yeah,
porn.
you clicked on this video, you're already at one step of the way there. Click on
True,
this
yeah,
link
you've taken
next.
the first step.
Start
Yeah, you've
talking to
taken
Dave.
step 1. Let's take step 2.
Yeah, and come to me too. Like, I'd love to help. But either way, thank you, Dave, for coming on. Truly was a pleasure. I have an appointment coming up. Otherwise, I'd go for another hour or two because I have a lot more to say. But really
Yeah, of course,
appreciate
man.
you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, brother. Been a good time.
Yeah,